Standing here on the ramparts of Barby Castle reminds me of a young 22-year-old, myself, as I stood here on a fresh summer's morning in 1991 and looked down in utter amazement at what was before me. That formation from the particular year 1991 is still regarded as one of the most amazing formations to have appeared throughout the entire history of the crop circle phenomenon. Exactly 17 years later, in 2008, we have an event that has certain connections to its 1991 predecessor with regard to its spiral ratchet. However, this formation has taken that simple design and adapted it to create what is arguably one of the most fundamental symbols in mathematics. Encoded within its ratcheting arcs, the crop pattern appears to show the first 10 digits of pi, which, as many will remember from our school days, is used to calculate the area of a circle using the formula pi r squared. These three circles placed on the perimeter of the formation could be indicating that pi is actually infinite. It is, by any calculation, a creation stunning in its ingenuity.
We are going to investigate the secrets behind the creation of the crop circles. This takes us on a quest from the earliest times to the present day, resulting in a greater understanding of this remarkable phenomenon.
Throughout history, buildings like this one at Wells Cathedral were built to convey the mysterious forces of the universe, just like Stonehenge, the Parthenon, and even the pyramids. Our journey takes us on a quest to understand the principles of sacred geometry, leading to far-reaching implications to every one of us in the 21st century. The cathedral is a fine example of the highly skilled stonemasons' work of the 13th century. The nobles and the general population viewed their works as a sheer act of wonder, just like a person seeing a man walk on the moon for the very first time.
The master builders were bound together by their closely guarded knowledge of the earthly and divine sciences of architecture. Their traditions stretched back over several millennia through ancient cultures, from the Neolithic civilizations, the Babylonians, Egyptians, Greeks to the Romans. Sacred geometry can be deemed as a belief system which forms the basis of patterns of existence. In the 12th and 13th centuries, much of the architecture of this magnitude carried this geometric discipline throughout the design of these cathedrals. By studying the nature of these forms and relationships to each other, insight may be gained into the aesthetic and mystical laws of the universe. Octagonal chapter houses, like this one here at Wells, were at the very hub of the cathedral's organisation in which meetings were held. The sacred architectural design of this building came from the biblical city of Jerusalem, bringing the mysteries of this architecture to England. The octagon was based on the Muslim building called the Dome on the Rock, which houses the sacred stone said to have many amazing mystical properties. It is believed by Muslims to be the spot from which Muhammad ascended to God in heaven. In Judaism, it is believed to be the place where Jacob dreamt about the ladder to heaven.
Octagonal chapter houses like this one here at Salisbury Cathedral is another significant example of the religious architecture built here in England in the 13th century, using principles of sacred geometry for their spiritual and transcendental potential, bringing the individual closer to God. After visiting those wonderful locations at Wells and Salisbury with their fantastic octagonal chapter houses, I'm reminded of the same shape here at Wilton in the field behind me. There's definitely a hidden octagon within the whole geometry of this formation, and indeed I had the same feeling in this formation as I did at Wells and Salisbury.
This circle appeared in an oat field, which is an unusual crop for Wiltshire. So why was I experiencing this sensation while exploring this huge design? Because the octagon was regarded by the ancients to contain esoteric powers within its geometric properties, which is why it was used extensively within religious architecture for centuries. It was intended that the octagon structures would have a profound influence on the individual. This could have been the reason for the atmosphere in this crop circle to have such an effect on myself.
This small parish church at Newton North is one of the oldest in England. A church has been on this site since 963 AD. Inside this church, we find an 8-sided octagonal font. Many of the fonts found in medieval churches had sacred geometry surrounding the baptism water bowl. Here again we see the importance of sacred geometry in relation to key religious ceremonial practices.
As we have discovered, this ancient knowledge of geometry was incredibly important to be kept as part of religious practices, to raise the individual to experience the divine elements of life. Going further back in time,
this remarkable wonder of the ancient world, Stonehenge, is one of many stone circles which usually date from the late Neolithic Bronze Age 3000 to 1500 BC. Their purpose was to make astronomical alignments and hold ancient ceremonial rites.
These circles were deemed as sacred places, like the ones here at Avebury. They created a place of great importance to the initiated and a sense of mystery to the local population. At this time, circle and henge culture was also occurring throughout many parts of Northern Europe.
Well, these megaliths are remnants of what is called the Cove. The Cove was basically the inner sanctuary of the stone circle itself. What is quite interesting about the Cove itself is that the initial ground plan back in 3000 BC looked very similar to crop circles we see today.
From the ground plan of Avebury, the Cove's location within the stone circle was an important element to these people's culture. It was used for important ceremonial practices.
Close to Avebury is Silbury Hill. This mysterious earthen mound, built in a stepped circular construction, demonstrates similarities to the Egyptians, who built structures like the pyramids, which surpassed any other constructions at that time. The ancient Egyptians were masters in surveying and architecture. The ancient Egyptians had a deep wisdom in the creational laws of the universe. These were taught to the initiates, the high priests, and the pharaoh himself. Many architectural principles came out of Egypt, with the secrets and numbers of geometry were taught to what was called the mystery schools.
The next leap forward in our understanding of geometry and mathematics came from the Greek civilization. Pythagoras was a leading figure as a mathematician, astronomer, and philosopher. He travelled extensively throughout what is now called the Middle East, including Babylon and Egypt. On his travels, he came across secret teachings in Egypt, providing him with knowledge to assist him in his great works. Pythagoras founded his own secret society in Crotone in Italy, called the Pythagoreans.
There were 3 levels to the institute itself, but the Pythagoreans saw the pentagram as a very sacred symbol in their order, and this particular formation represents that symbol 5-fold.
This was a non-religious group that was based purely on knowledge within its own tier structure. The institute was comprised of 3 orders. The third and the highest was the most secret. Within the society, many geometric symbols were of great importance, such as the pentagram, which has hidden meanings and was sacred to his society. This particular shape represented the 5 elements of man, these being water, earth, fire, air, and the divine. All of these elements have been encoded within the crop circles for decades. However, the Pythagoreans believed that these very shapes had properties encoded within them that reflected the harmony of the universe itself. Also among the symbols was the Vesica Piscis, which was considered by the Pythagoreans as a holy number of the ratio of 1.73203. Later, in Christian times, it was also known as the measure of the fish. These discoveries now bring us into Euclidean geometry, a mathematical system attributed to the Greek mathematician Euclid of Alexandria. This particular event at Auburn in Wiltshire in 2007 demonstrates the type of three-dimensional form Euclid was discovering. He was considered to be the father of geometry and lived 200 years after Pythagoras at around 300 BC. Euclidean geometry describes physical space. His writing, called simply Elements, was the first influential piece of geometry in history. The Elements begin with the plane geometry as the first axiometric system and the first examples of formal proof. The Elements goes on to the solid geometry of 3 dimensions, and Euclidean geometry was subsequently extended to any finite number of dimensions. Roman architecture was famous for its viaducts, bridges, roads, sculptures and buildings, but very few great buildings in the world have a parallel to the Pantheon. None better represent the genius of Roman architecture. Built about 125 AD, the Pantheon is a remarkable achievement of Roman engineering and most of all sacred geometry. Dio Cassius in 220 AD said, "Thanks to its dome, it resembles the vault of heaven itself." The open circle at the top could be representing the doorway to an alternative existence.
One of the most awe-inspiring features that grace such cathedrals as this one here at Bristol and at Chartres in France are these magnificent circular windows you see above me. They were divided into pieces of stone mullions and tracery to create what the French called roue, meaning wheel, which the English called rose windows.
The transcendental light that cascades through these windows would have most certainly mesmerized the people at this time, and even today they still have a wonderful ethereal quality to them.
Well, it's mazes such as this one, which were part of medieval culture, certainly in England and in Europe. These actual mazes were part of a religious purpose for people to journey on a pilgrimage for enlightenment.
Pilgrims came to walk labyrinths and mazes throughout Europe, as the majority of people could not make pilgrimages to Jerusalem. It was important to make this journey in the hope of becoming closer to God. This was a simpler alternative to a visit to the Holy Land. The history of these labyrinths dates back to the Cretans and Greeks and the Romans. The importance of these meandering paths was that they represented the sacred journey of the Christian pilgrimages. They demonstrated the power of the church at the time with their pathways towards spiritual enlightenment. Through many periods of human history, there have been good reason for secret societies, as the state and the official religion did not take kindly to alternative views. These were seen as a threat to their power base and simply could not be tolerated. This would lead to psychological and actual wars against new social thinking and new scientific concepts. There are far too many illustrations of this to list, but here are just 2. The first example is that many religious organisations have held fundamentalist doctrines that have caused untold pain and misery, such as the many Catholic and Protestant religious wars in Europe. For years, the official church would not accept the scientific truth that the planet Earth rotated around the sun. As I said, one could have gone on and on with examples. The development of secret societies was inevitable if anyone held different and unorthodox ideas to mainstream thinking. 17th century London was a time of great political and social upheaval. One had to be careful with regard to revolutionary ideas, hence the need for secret societies such as the Invisible College.
Earlier in this century, a society known as Invisible College was formed here behind me at Canterbury Tower in Islington, London. This is where many of their meetings were actually held. The key initial members of this college were Sir Francis Bacon and Sir Christopher Wren.
The idea of an invisible college spread throughout Europe, forming a network of astronomers, mathematicians and philosophers.
The Invisible College went on to form what is now known as the Royal Society, which is now headquartered in the building behind me. Such early founded members included Elias Ashmole, Robert Boyle and even Sir Christopher Wren.
We also know Elias Ashmole himself was an early Freemason and one of the earliest members initiated into the lodge in Warrington, Lancashire in 1646. Therefore, the link between the Invisible College, the Royal Society and Freemasonry is undeniable.
At the same period, Freemasonry was growing with great importance in certain circles. The level of secrecy to discuss anything of the esoteric in nature had to be extremely high. The consequences of these discussions being known to the authorities could have ended the participants being actually burned at the stake. It took from the dangerous times of the late 17th century to the start of the reign of George I for Freemasonry to become well established. Roughly the same time it took Sir Christopher Wren to build this magnificent St Paul's Cathedral behind me.
In the third year of George I's reign, in 1717, the Grand Lodge of England was formed with Anthony Sayre being the first Grand Master of English Freemasonry. He was also a renowned member of the Royal Society. The Freemasons carried out mysterious rituals that were linked to the ancient Master Masons of biblical times. They used their secret signs, such as the special handshake, to identify other members of other lodges. The stonemasonry tools, such as the compass and the set square, symbolized moral and ethical virtues within the Brotherhood. The Masons were greatly attracted to sacred geometry and architecture. They regarded Pythagoras as a major figure in their Brotherhood.
Well, here we see outside the members' door at the Masonic Lodge in Marlborough, a circle surrounding a compass and a set square. Well, these are the two basic tools used in geometric construction. After visiting this particular formation, it's become clear to me that there is a clear and concise connection with the crop circle phenomenon and sacred geometry, also incorporating sometimes Masonic symbolism within the design. The design on the main axis has these four eye shapes, which are strikingly similar to the Eye of Providence, or what they call the all-seeing eye. This symbol is part of the iconography of the Freemasons, which signifies God himself, also known as the Grand Architect of the universe. There is even more information encoded within the design. The eye shapes themselves are also representations of the Vesica Piscis, which has been a subject of mystical speculation at several periods of history. This is a reminder that geometry is an important and fundamental part of Freemasonry. The 18th century architect John Wood was born in 1704 and was certainly the unsung hero of British architecture at this time. The circus in Bath was Wood's finest achievement. However, his legacy was shrouded in mystery as to why his visions of Bath could be traced from the biblical times rather than the heathens of classical antiquity. John Wood was thought to be a Mason, and these carvings around the circus themselves provided a deep-rooted understanding of his Freemasonry connections and also his esoteric knowledge of divine proportions.
When he combined the legend of King Bladud, the mystery of the juridical university and the deep-rooted influence of Freemasonry, he created an extraordinary myth surrounding the foundation of Bath. To give such beliefs physical form, Wood strove to restore the magnitude of an ancient British city and set about achieving it by manipulating the geometry and proportions of traditional British monuments such as Stonehenge and Stanton Drew. One mysterious prominent feature which occurs around the complete circumference of the circus is these panels beneath the frieze that contain 36 dots carved in relief. Wood, as a Mason, would have certainly known of the mystery of 36. In the Jewish faith, according to the Midrash, the light created by God on the first day of creation shone for exactly 36 hours. Could this be the explanation?
Looking out towards the magnificent Villa Pusey here and seeing this wonderful formation below me, there do appear to be unusual elements to its design, which does actually bring me on to the geometric aspect of these wonderful creations. On the crest of the hill behind me, a circle has appeared in a field of barley. It has appeared as a three-dimensional globe with extremely interesting elements within its construction. Notably, these elements are broken down into 16 segments, upon which 8 are actually filled. The ancients held great regard for the segmentic circle and the three-dimensional circle, the sphere, upon which all spherical trigonometry is actually based. This led on to the global grid system of latitude and longitude.
This became known as the geographical coordinate system. It basically enables locations on the Earth to be expressed in 3 coordinates. Latitude is an angle from a point on the Earth's surface along the equator measuring from the centre of the sphere, whereas the longitude is a meridian from each of the 2 poles. The meridians themselves are 2 halves of great circles, however they are not parallel. The longitude lines can be clearly seen from this crop circle design, separating the 2 halves of the circles. Its geographic qualities cannot be mistaken, and indeed could this design be making reference to the history of the mapping of the world? The Greek philosopher Aristotle assumed the Earth to be spherical due to ships disappearing over the horizon and the stars only viewed from certain parts of the Earth. This unusual event at Overton White Horse contains similar values with regard to the segmented circle.
In the 19th century, mathematics and geometry was to take giant leaps forward in the understanding of the universe. One key mathematician was to make an amazing breakthrough in the concept of group theory, and this was Évariste de Galois.
This Frenchman, at a very young age, laid the foundations of this theory connected to the symmetry of structures, which was to become, under his own name, the Galois theory. This was to provide a connection between field theory and string theory, which could lead us to the theory of everything. Tragically and dramatically, Évariste was killed in a duel at the tender age of 20. As we moved into the 20th century, these explosive geometric theories had a major influence on the arts and the sciences.
Individuals such as Harold MacDonald Scott Coexeter, who read mathematics at Cambridge University, but also went on for 60 years to work at the University of Toronto, was regarded as one of the great geometrists of his time.
He was most noted for his work on regular polytopes and higher dimensional geometries. He also influenced other major figures of the 20th century, such as the remarkable artist M.C. Escher and the groundbreaking architect Buckminster Fuller.
Here at Kensington Gardens, we can see a three-dimensional construction by Olafur Eliasson and Ketil Thorson. This really captures the spirit of geometry, bringing it right from the past into the 21st century.
One can see a real exploration into spatial geometry taking place here in this wonderful structure. The clear view of the sky at the top of the chamber reminds me of the Pantheon in Rome. Is this modern-day open circle also representing the doorway to an alternative existence? This timber-clad building has a spiral pathway leading to the top, where one can either enjoy the view of the park or look into the central chamber. In the centre of the chamber, we see a spiral. The spiral itself has also been represented in the fields, as this 2002 formation clearly shows, in the form of the Nautilus shell. While walking around the design, I had the same sensations as visiting the spiral in the Kensington Garden structure. The spiral image has been seen in civilizations as far back as the Neolithic era and possibly before.
In the second half of the 20th century, mathematical institutes at universities grew in great importance, such as this one here at Oxford. The mathematician Sir Roger Penrose, Professor of Mathematics here at Oxford University, popularised many geometric principles, such as the Penrose tiling, but also the importance of the impossible triangle known as the Penrose triangle.
These types of formations are continuing to form, like this particular event at Wayne Smithy in 2008 in the form of the optical illusion formations. The sheer scale of this formation is something to behold. This formation has 241 circles in total, 73 main key circles with 168 small grape shot circles. The fact that there is an alignment with the ancient Wayne Smithy burial chamber is also fascinating. Numbers also carry a great significance for the circle makers.
The 8th of the 8th of the 8th, a momentous day in the Chinese calendar, as is their first day of the Beijing Olympics. But not only for the Chinese, but also for England, as this tremendous formation behind me shows the huge figure of 8, or what some people call the infinity symbol. However, the number 8 is a very important and significant number for many religions around the world.
Its blatant appearance on this important date could not be overlooked with regard to the Chinese. 8 itself in the Chinese culture is of course extremely lucky, as 8 sounds like, in their language, prosper or wealth. It is also a number for eternity, never ending and forever remaining. This brings us on to the Mobius strip. A Mobius strip is a strip of paper which is twisted and attached to the ends, forming an endless two-dimensional surface that was basically developing a geometrical language to higher dimensions. Here again, one has to be impressed by the sheer scale of this formation. It was formed in the early hours of the morning of the 8th, when we know that there were many night watchers up on the hills above this event.
Here we are at Barton St Clair, and we can see from the top of the hillside that there is a pentagram inside this formation. Inside the pentagram are these rectangular, elongated shapes, which I think have key elements to this design. As we know, the Pythagoreans had great mystery in the pentagram itself, and was used for initiation and healing properties.
On further analysis, the design has uncanny parallels to the Pentagon in Washington, DC. Are we being shown through symbolism and geometry a deeper message regarding the corruption of power? This is one of those remarkable circles that includes all the elements so important to us. As I shoot our pole shots, I marvel at the precision, the geometry and the message. It is all here, set in this wonderful amphitheatre formed by the surrounding hills. Absolutely incredible. Just look at the precision here in the construction of these two tapered and delicate crescents surrounding this mysterious pentagram. This is one of those wonderful moments that occur almost every season within the phenomenon, where we can say this is a perfect circle.
It's a whole different experience of crop circling inside maize, as because of their height, me being 6 foot and these being at least 6'4", it's very difficult to find formations and exactly where to pinpoint them.
In 2008, it was very unusual to find in Wiltshire so many formations appearing in the maize crop.
Well, you could easily mistake this for a scene in Signs. I feel like Mel Gibson when he walked out and saw that formation in his backyard. But here we are just outside of Avebury, and it's amazing to find formations in maize alone in September, but to see it with this floor pattern coming out from the perimeter, not a spiral, and going straight up into this central section. I've seen nothing like it before.
The sheer height of the crop creates a completely different atmosphere to that of barley and wheat. We can see the geometry of the two formations placed next to each other, or are they to be regarded as one? The circle and the crescent are key geometric features. Being next to the ancient Avebury stone circles also adds to the mystery of this particular formation. Not too far from Avebury, we see this pentagon star appearing in the maize crop. And this nearby skyscraper formation, also in maize, so reminiscent of this remarkable and ominous 2006 Big Bang skyscraper formation that appeared with such impact near the ancient Wayland Smithy Long Barrow. Early each season we have many formations appearing in Wiltshire, from the very impressive to the smaller designs. Each one has its own character and message. A glorious visual profusion of designs to behold. There are references to the op art school of artists in this formation of 2008. There are also complex geometric designs such as this one that appeared in June 2008 by the most ancient road in England known as the Ridgeway. Over the years we have seen the arrival of the swallows along with other creatures that are so important to the well-being of this planet of ours. I feel the ecological message is clear to us all. One great example of these events occurred in 2008. We can see 6 swallows within this striking design. The precision is marvellous to behold. The atmosphere in the formation could be felt by all who entered it. The following night, the 6 swallows were joined by another 6, thus resulting in a total of 12 swallows. This made this new creation even more impressive. It had to be a wonderful experience to have witnessed the results of both phases of this spectacular event. This intriguing formation caused even more interest in this now larger flight of swallows and attracted many people from all over the world to visit the circle. This formation appeared in the very hub of this extraordinary phenomenon, right next to East Field. As I said, the ecological theme usually appears in different forms, and in 2007 this stunning butterfly appeared not too far from the ancient Atherton White Horse. Its impact on the landscape is plain to see. This brings me to the key point behind these remarkable events. There is usually an important message to be decoded from them other than just witnessing the impressive design features. This is what attracts so many people to the crop circle phenomenon. Clearly this is the case with the formation that appeared next to this wind farm in southern Oxfordshire in 2008. In this case, it is the importance of clean energy to steer us away from a global carbon-based energy society to a world where there is a chance for all life in general to survive from the threat of global warming. These 3 cogs could represent our mechanical ingenuity that can be applied to us to move away from the present-day energy-producing carbon burning plants to other cleaner methods. The whole ecological message is becoming prominent within the phenomenon. This follows on from the other meaningful Mayan interpretations that have been taking place over the past 4 years. In 2005, the message within the remarkable formation that appeared by Well and Smithy pointed towards a key event. According to the Mayan calendar, on the winter solstice of 2012, their calendar comes to an end. Then there will be a massive change on the Earth. A few days later, in a nearby field of wheat, another profound formation appeared, also supporting the Mayan message. Will 2012 be the year of major change? In 2008, the goddess of life appeared in a field within the Velopusi, evoking the spirit of Gaia. This large Celtic design appeared just outside of the Avebury Stone Circle in 2005. It is the first time we've witnessed joined quintuplet sets in a design of this magnitude. In 2006, a new concept of superb three-dimensional designs began to form within the fields. These circles evolved as the season progressed and caused great excitement as to the possibilities of what these designs could represent. Basically, a new understanding of the universe was being shown to us. The question we asked was, how far will this journey of discovery take us? Is this a suggestion of time travel? The Blowing Stone Formation of 2006 is a classic example of how far the formations have progressed, not only technically within the fields, but also the potential message being conveyed. In 2006, the wormhole set the theme throughout the season. Are we looking at our future? Etchelhampton Hill has been and still is a hotspot for crop circle formations since 1990. These designs have evolved to the highest level as seen in this formation that appeared in 2006. Is this a glimpse into a new beginning? A gateway to other universes? Here again we see the importance of the placement of formations. This 2008 design appeared in the wonderful bowl below the Cherry Hill Downs. On the top of the Cherry Hill Downs is a Neolithic settlement and the Lansdowne obelisk built in the 1840s. There is also an 18th century white horse carved into the side of the chalk hills, a magnificent setting indeed for a formation to appear. One key aspect of the crop circle phenomenon is that people from all over the world meditate within them. The whole ambience of the circle and setting creates a temporary temple that lasts for only a few weeks. This is the very essence of these annual occurrences.
On a cold winter's day, I return to the heartland of the phenomenon. It's easy to see why crop circles appear around here every year, with the inexplicable Avebury Stone Circle and the Wimble Hill settlement, which is one of the oldest settlements in England. But I return here basically to gather my thoughts. These stone circles are situated adjacent to the West Cape Long and the mysterious Silbury Hill. You are drawn here. This is the most obvious beacon to head to, a spiritual home. But amazingly, this is not the hub of these global events. You have to go some 5 miles south of Avebury to really hit the bullseye. This is the very epicentre of the global crop circle phenomenon. Yes, this is the wonderful and beautiful Pewsey Vale in Wiltshire, England, the very hub of these global events. Below me is the famous East Field, and further back from me here is also Golden Boar Hill. But every other field in this adjacent area is very significant for these amazing crop circles. Adjacent to the famous East Field is also Woodbury Hill. Below Woodbury Hill itself is also Southfield, which is also a major area for crop circles. Just over the hill on the other side of Adam's Grave and below the White Horse are moorfields in which important crop circles appear. In fact, this area above and below Pewsey Vale is the most outstanding area to visit in the season. Many of these hills are capped with ancient forts and burial sites. Overnight in the crop circle season, many people from all around the world populate these areas and hills in the hope of capturing something extraordinary on their cameras and night sights. As they scan the night skies, they sense something within themselves, a universal language. For whatever reason, this has got to be the place to be.
This now brings us back to the history of the crop circle phenomenon. Throughout the years, there have been major designs that have graced the fields of England, covering the concepts we have been discussing. This brings us on to what I personally believe could be occurring alongside the mysterious element of the phenomenon. Could the crop circles be echoes of the great cathedrals and sacred ancient sites that have inspired and moved people over the ages? Now, what are these coded messages that we have been witnessing over the last 3 decades? Are they the meaningful message for us all to interpret? Or are we the modern day equivalent to the pilgrims that journeyed to the major religious sites? Were the experiences they were encountering at these places very similar to what is occurring within the crop circles today? What is causing these effects? Let's explore the possibilities. Geometry has influenced society over the millennia, not only through science but also architecture. Geometry and symmetry are also an underlying pattern of nature that we are part of day by day. We are taken on a journey of discovery into a higher realms of existence, which most certainly creates a power of its own. Just like the major sacred sites across the world, the power of place could indeed be the key which causes the individual to have experiences they cannot explain rationally. Many secret societies formed throughout the history were connected to architecture and geometry. In one way or another, the crop circle phenomenon has also remained shrouded in mystery and secrecy. Whatever one's views are on the creation of these formations, one has to step back a little and look afresh. What do we see? An array of wonderful and perplexing formations that occur in many areas of the world each year. However they happen to get there, these intrigue and inspire people in many countries as the circles use a universal language to communicate their messages. Returning from where we began to the Pi formation, we can clearly see the geometric link between Pi and most crop circles. The decimal form of Pi represents infinity, which is also the essence of a circle. Physicists have observed that Pi appears to be part of everything in nature. Pi is obvious in the moon, the planets and the stars. It also can be seen in the double helix of DNA. Pi can be found in the expanding rings from any impact. It has even been discovered that Pi is in superstring theory, part of the search of the theory of everything. Mysterious messages like this one have been kept alive through the universal language of geometry. This is the remarkable secret behind the crop circle phenomenon.